Welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm your host, Tristen Stawicki. Think of me as your pragmatic shaman bestie. Join in with other high-vibe, lovely people as I unravel spiritual ideas to help create change and growth in your life. I cover a variety of spiritual topics, sharing knowledge to meet you wherever you are in your journey. As a shaman, astrologer, and human design reader, I help you understand how to make informed decisions and incorporate different modalities using discernment and your own intuition. Today, you will gain powerful shamanic healing tools you can use to incorporate spiritual practices in non-traditional ways. Whether you're just beginning or need a knowledgeable best friend with the next phase of your journey, I'm here to help. Stay tuned. Musings and Modalities starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm Tristen Stawicki, your pragmatic shaman bestie, and I'm so excited for today's episode, Hope, Community, and the Healing Power of Poetry, with our special guest, Reese Landry. I'm so excited Reese is here to share her writing process, to discuss poetry as a means of emotional and trauma processing, which is such a beautiful topic and so needed. And we're also going to discuss how poetry can be really used to unite and empower others. In times where having hope is more important than ever, this episode really hopes to shine a light on the healing powers of a written word. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And so I'm so excited to talk with you because I wanted to first and foremost congratulate you on your debut poetry collection, which has a publisher, which is huge, huge deal. Not only to like write something, get across the finish line, but to have it also be with the Brooklyn Writers Press, huge deal. So really, really congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about it all. It's been a wild ride.
Oh, amazing. Um, what I really love about the poems that I've seen you share on social media is the variety of emotions and themes that you cover. So I wanted to ask, like, where do you find inspiration for what to write about?
So I've always written my poetry as like an almost an automatic form of emotional processing. It literally helps me identify what I'm going through if I'm not even sure yet. I kind of write through it and figure out like, oh, okay, that's how I'm feeling. So I definitely start with, like an emotion, something that kind of is basically begging to come out of me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. And then always the world around me. People watching is so great for getting inspiration. And it's just, there's beautiful world around us.
There is, and what you talked about just reminded me of. I love when Joan Didion would kind of talk about. She wrote to like learn herself, which I'm going to butcher her exact words, but and I always find that's so beautiful when you're just wanting to work through something or understand, the different facets that we all have. That there's this beautiful tool that we can access at any time, right? We all have a notes app, we all have a pen and paper, and that's really, really lovely.
Absolutely.
So now that you've talked us through your inspiration, is your writing process like every day, or is it, talk me through like what that looks like for you?
So it is a lot, well, based on like how I'm going through things at the time. So when I'm going through a lot of difficult things or even a lot of good things, but just I have a lot to process, I'll write 5 to 6 poems a day. Sometimes I'll go a week or two without, but I really just try to sit down at the end of the night, kind of collect my thoughts, and I have something I want to get out. I write it down. So it's mostly before bedtime. I call it the witching hour,
Mhm.
is definitely my prime time.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'm blown away by 5 to 6 poems, and that's so beautiful because it's just like I know when I have emotions bottled up, I'm not sometimes acting in integrity. I'm not acting like myself, and what a beautiful way to just reset every day for you, right? Right before you go to sleep. That's lovely. So
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a reset.
yeah, oh, that's beautiful. So the title of your collection is Hope, Love, and the Lack Thereof, an Evolution of Mind, which is so pretty to say. Like, I just love saying it.
Thank you.
And I would love to hear like how you chose that title and how you hope the audience feels after experiencing your beautiful emotions and words that are so touching.
So, Hope, Love, and the Lack Thereof came out of the process of organizing the poems for the collection. It is 21 years worth of my poetry, starting at 7 years old. So the first poem in the book is actually, it's called My First Good, in parentheses, poem. And that's exactly what it is. And I was 7 years old. So it spans from then to just about a year and a half ago when I started putting the collection together. Um, and each section, I kind of categorize them into how they focus on, are they addressing an element of the outside world or life in general or community? So the first section, hope, focuses on external factors. And it kind of takes you through the journey of that naivete of a 7 year old who sees all the hope in the world and thinks everything's beautiful. And it takes you through the journey of losing that hope and kind of going to the opposite end of, being more pessimistic. And then it integrates the two in a more, mature perspective of the duality of life and taking the good with the bad, and everything in balance. So each section takes you on a journey in that sense of opposite perspectives and then integrated. Love, being the second section, focuses on romantic relationships. That one was a little tough because it's the biggest one. We all write about love the most, I think. And there were, so many different relationships, from my first boyfriend at 14 to my son's father. So I basically kind of used those and my storytelling skills to form a little bit of a narrative there, and make it fluid, like a love story. But of course it's based on many different influences. And the last section, lack thereof, focuses on the internal self. So it in the lack thereof of hope and love, I feel is where we really find ourselves, and in breaking down is where we're able to rebuild and be more beautiful than ever. So the last section focuses on breaking, being broken is a very important step, and to rebuild.
That is incredible. Thank you for that breakdown. That's absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
Um, yes, no, that's perfect. One of the things that came to mind for me is almost, and we'll see if you agree, and totally okay if not, almost using being naive or wanting to be a little gullible at times, because it's just nicer to have beginner's mind. It's just a little easier to get by when you're like, let me just believe the best is possible because I just can't take anything being less than that right now. So I don't know if that's an emotion you've experienced or worked through, throughout this process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we have to be 7 years old to hope the best for the world. We definitely all have our days where, and that's largely, again, what the collection emphasizes is duality, is we have those days where everything is beautiful and we have those days where it's not. And the balance of those is just life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I love about the vehicle of poetry is it really allows us to like name that emotion, name that ache, name that thing we're experiencing, even if we don't write it and we're kind of consuming someone else's work. I feel like it's just as powerful, whether you're creating or consuming it. That's one of the few things, right? When I'm watching television, and maybe it's because I'm watching some trash too, but when I'm watching television,
We all do.
it's right, exactly. It's maybe not as it doesn't have the healing depth for me as poetry always have has had.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I feel what you mean about like being able to name the ache and name the emotion. It's again what I've done for myself through the process of poetry is name it to myself. And a large reason that I started the Instagram account back in October and started sharing my poetry is I was going through some of the hardest times of my life and writing some of the deepest, most emotional poetry. And I had to believe that I was not the only one feeling these things, and in connecting with other people and feeling less alone has made me feel empowered, and hope that I can, empower others with my words. And it's just been a really fun time sharing with everyone, and like getting to realize that I'm not alone. None of us are alone. I hope other people realize it through my words. I have a line of a poem that says her pain is not unique but common even.
Mm.
So in that idea that this collection takes you through my journey, it's essentially a compiled journal from 21 years of my life. Um, but it's the emotional journey that so many of us take on throughout our lives, and there's so many emotions named in the collection, like you said, that there's something for everyone type of thing, that you'll have felt something that's in there. And it really, I like to emphasize the fact that it takes you on the emotional journey. Each section takes you on an emotional journey. So it says, yes, you can feel this way. It says, yes, you can feel this way. And it says, but, yes, you can also feel this way. You can feel everything. You can, so yeah, it's a lot about the journey and the emotions and connecting people through shared, not so much life experiences, but emotional experiences.
Right. And that strength and resilience, no matter what our past kind of held for us, but we've all continued to show up. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, no, that's beautiful. Well, we've kind of teased about your work. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a poem or two, and you're welcome to at any point in the show, but at least the first one, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. So I did share this one at a recent Queer Writers Showcase. It definitely has elements that resonate with that community. But I also feel that because I am a Cuban American and a woman, that it speaks to those communities as well. It's an acrostic poem using the word solidarity. S, softly and quietly we gather. O, ourselves, our strength, our resources. L, little ripples in the air, but nothing noticeable. I, intensity is best kept concealed. D, deep in each of our chests. A, accumulating like snowflakes when they finish falling. R, readying the ground for our stealthy uprising. I, in time, we will combine our battlefield hearts. T, to create a place that is so our own. Y, you'd be a fool to approach our border.
It's so good. Like
Thank
truly
you.
stunning. Oh,
It's poems like that that I hope to feel, uniting people and empowering people. And even performing it at the showcase was so amazing because I finally felt that in person, where I've been doing it online mostly. And it was really great just to feel the energy, the way that people connected.
no, that's beautiful. And what I love about not only your work, but you is that you are like very authentically showing up in the world. You're like, these are the communities that matter to me, that I'm a part of. And you're like, let me connect with them actively, because I think it can be easy to hide behind words at times, right? And be like, oh, I have intention of doing something. And it's really the action that people take is really, really important. And so I'd love to learn more about just like your experience discovering your calling to really show up for community, and those communities that matter to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually funny you mentioned that. I was just talking to my dad, and we were talking about old home videos that he had digitized. And there's this one where he and my stepmother asked me and my two sisters what each of us want to be when we grow up. I listed about 17 things, and none of them was writer.
Incredible. What do we have
It's
like cowgirl? Like,
hilarious
yeah,
looking back. I'm like
exactly.
waiting as I'm running through the things, and I'm like, I really didn't say writer. And honestly, at that point in time, I know I did want to be a writer, and I think that I just didn't believe it was possible. I really didn't see it as an achievable goal. It was something that I told people I want to be a writer, and they were like, okay, what are you really going to do? Yeah, so that
Devastating.
was tough. And so for a long time, especially writing poetry, I figured that, I'd have to be known for something else or have published something else for people to want to know what my thoughts are. And I never thought that poetry would be the first thing that I did publish. So it's been pretty crazy that the poetry is the first thing coming out now. I really got my inspiration to share from, going through the difficult things that I've gone through and hoping that I can inspire people. So um, I pulled all my old journals out, pencil, purple ink, everything I could find. I updated stuff, I rewrote stuff, I just wrote brand new poems with the same concept as something from before. I really pulled out all the stops. Yeah, and put this together and sharing it on Instagram, and realized that people do want to know my thoughts, and it's crazy, and I think it's largely because we do all go through the same things and feel the same things. So I think a large part of getting my stuff out there now has been the journey of just realizing that I could do this.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think it's so exciting to understand what your next levels are too, right? Because there's so much growth you've seen that's very tangible and through your writing, your experiences, the resilience you continue to show, but also it's like, and where are those pockets where I'm still dreaming a little small, that I'll look back as I work on my next works and, I'll go like, oh, wow, I could have, stepped out a little more. Or I was still a little timid here, which is such beautiful, like, it's such a beautiful thought to be like, and then next time when I'm publishing something, like how much I'll have grown.
Absolutely. The growth is amazing, and it was a huge part of, pulling out all these old poems and just reading stuff I wrote when I was 7 about the trees and colors and these lovely things. And it really, like the evolution of mind, the subtitle emphasizes that sense of growth throughout the collection, that it really, the ideas evolve and the two opposites integrate, and it just basically shows you everything I felt and thought until I've gotten to this point and feel that I am somewhat balanced in the world.
Yeah, no, it's such beautiful vulnerability, which I'm so excited to read through. One of the things I wanted to ask is for those of us that maybe don't feel as comfortable calling ourselves a writer or using maybe any label, but specifically with writer, author, and things like that, if you had like 1 to 2 things that you had to unlearn in this process as you were, becoming published, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Absolutely. I would say the idea that the first draft has to be perfect. I know everyone says it, but it is so important. You cannot work with a blank piece of paper. Like, get it down on paper and you can absolutely polish it and play with it. My mom hates that I edit my poetry. Because I write them and she loves them and she doesn't want them to change. And then there's like 15 iterations and she gets so mad. So even with poetry, you wouldn't think of it as much, but I do. I edit it a lot. You just literally like word vomit on the page and fix it up later. Um, Another thing I would say is that, there is no writer's block. I know that's controversial.
Mm. Okay, yes. Tell me
I,
more. I love a
I
contrarian
know
opinion.
that's controversial, but there is no writer's block, and that probably comes largely out of my process of writing every day, or at least every time I have something to process in myself. Is that there's always something going on in you. There's always something going on around you. You don't have to sit down and write a project. Sit down and write what you're dealing with, and I tell everybody to journal and everyone thinks I'm a dweeb, but like that is it. And that's the best way to find your voice, is just to practice your writing. So it's just, just sit down and do it. Unfortunately, I know it doesn't always want to come. I'm not saying it does, but there's something you can put down on the page. Don't let yourself be blocked.
No, I love that. And one of the recent kind of shows I had talked about using your analytical skill sets to bring into your creativity. Really, you talked about the same thing, which is consistency, right? You have a daily practice. It is grounded. You have a specific kind of purpose with it. Some people need time-based, some don't. There's other parameters you can add to it or remove from it, but it's just like, you just got to do it. And as much as people want to be in flow and things like that, which of course, shaman, astrologer love being in flow. But if you don't have discipline, like what is that actually showing up for you? What is that actually doing, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so I'm also excited that you have a year and a half of maybe other poems and work that you. That's exciting. That's very, very cool because you do have
Definitely.
that. You do have that, like you won't struggle with, that writer's block or just a lack of inspiration because the world is ever changing. That's stunning. Oh,
Yeah, it's again not you know, you don't have to sit down and write a project. If you sit down and write something, don't look at it, don't use it for a week, a month, a year. I have a novel I spent 5 years trying to write, you know, in high school when I was like, I'm going to write a book. And, and it was basically Nicholas Sparks-esque. You know, it was in my imitation phase. I was learning my
Incredible.
voice, so I totally abandoned it because it's basically a Nicholas Sparks book. But even then, I've cherry picked that. One of my poems is a couple sentences from a chapter of that. One of my screenplay scenes in the screenplay I'm rewriting right now is from that. Some of my poems are actual journal entries that I've from just actually journaling, not thinking I'm writing anything. And
Yeah.
then the point, you know, the case in point, and then I find that I can use something. So I guess that's what I mean. Just by put something down on the page is, you know, even if you use two or three different things from two or three different sources and you put them together into something beautiful a year after you wrote the first one, you're using that. I've found that in collecting all my old journals and using all this old poetry, in cherry picking from that novel that I tried to write, and just I've used almost everything I've ever written, which is actually crazy to me. Yeah, in some form. This not in this collection, but in the screenplay I'm rewriting and some of the short fiction I haven't published. So I just yeah, everything is valuable, and you know you can always use it, so you get it on the page and then you have it.
Mm. And when you're kind of thinking about when you're in your creating process versus I'm kind of zooming out as the lens of storyteller, is that two different days, or are you kind of mixing both of those in the same like afternoon, evening? Kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the process for poetry and the process for a story for me is actually probably about opposite.
Oh, great.
Because the poetry, it comes right out of me and the form comes later. So it basically it kind of starts inside out. I
Mhm.
guess I would say the story starts more outside in, where I have, you know, my not template structure, but you know what I mean, you bullets that you hit.
Yeah.
So you build yours what I like to call a skeleton, and I call it skeleton writing. And it's literally he did this, she did that. And then from the skeleton I add some meat, and so you go in and you kind of fluff that up and you make that sound better, you add more details, and then you add skin, and you have your whole body, and you kind of do that last polish and everything. So I would say that the stories that I write are much more based on the structure of them than the intrinsic idea or the intrinsic emotion as a poem is. Because my stories also turn into these enormous spider webs that I really, as soon as I'm like, it's a story, okay, we're going.
I love that so much. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, my poems, I call them short but not so sweet.
Mhm.
And then my stories are where I get long-winded.
Oh, we love a whole universe too. We're just creating. That's
Me and
awesome.
my friend are working on a story now, and we're like, are we world building? And we're like, I think we're world building. I'm like, okay, but we're gonna make a small world. It's a small world after all. Please, please.
Yep. Totally get that. One of my favorite things to play is Dungeons and Dragons. And so, though I don't do it in written form, like it's so cool to build a world and just experience different characters and things like that. That's awesome.
It's something I've always been in awe of, and I've always been intimidated by. Some of my favorite stories are like the dystopian futures and the sci-fi, but I have just literally always been like scared of it. I didn't think I could do it. And now that I have a partner and we're sitting down and we're just kind of doing it together, he's like, dive in. And I'm like, okay. But it is really exciting because it's something that I love and it's something I didn't think I could do. And even I, you know, that I'm still showing myself as I'm going that there's things I still think I can't do and I can. So we're
Yeah.
always growing. I love that. I love
Mm,
that.
definitely. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I'd love if you wouldn't mind sharing one more poem.
Absolutely. This one I actually wrote in a therapy through poetry session locally here in Rhode Island. And there were three prompts given, and I actually misunderstood. You were supposed to use the three in one poem, and I actually wrote a poem based on each. So this one is one of the prompts was I release. basically anything that you would like to release. And so it is a list poem. And I thought a lot about what do I need to let go of. So I release the tension in my breath, the negative neurons that set fire to my mind, my nervous system's memory, everything within me that's been trying to crawl free, the skin that's been trapping me, the way I want things to be, every thought I've had of my future in the face of my fate, the need for control that's been controlling me, the weights placed on my shoulders, the ones I added on my own, the fear of the backlash of truly being, anything that doesn't suit the person I'm becoming.
I love that so much. Of course, both poems are exceptional and touched me. This one specifically touched me because it was like I haven't been able to convey how impactful my shamanic training was, and it just perfectly encapsulates all the things you have to unlearn and talk about peeling back your skin and your muscles. Like you go back to that skeleton form, right? And you just rebuilt throughout it. So it's so, so beautiful.
Yeah, rebuilding is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Oh, stunning.
Thank you.
No, that's perfect. Do you have any readings that you're doing in person at all or upcoming events?
I do not have any readings lined up, but I am doing a book signing at
Nice.
Archive, I'm so sorry, Archive Book and Snackery in Providence, Rhode Island. That is on September 4th at 6 p.m. So I will be selling books and signing books, and I am just so beyond myself. I am just so excited.
That is awesome. The very like pragmatic part of me is like, have you picked a signature? Do you like, you know what I mean? Like, do you have
I
a favorite
know.
like pen or marker?
I do have a favorite pen. It's the Sharpie S Gel. I'll say that. Let y'all know buy that pen. But it's funny that you say the signature because I'm actually publishing under a pen name. I'm using just my nickname, Reese, and my mother's last name, Landry. She's always been my biggest supporter of my writing, and I've told her since I was a tot that I would publish under her name. So I'm publishing under Reese Landry, but my full name is Reese Sejas, and I've always signed that. So now I've tried to sign Reese Landry, and I'm like having to decide how to do it, and it's crazy.
Right. And you have to think about like action economy, right? Which is like how much, how big, how, all of those little
Oh
things.
yeah, don't give myself carpal tunnel.
Exactly, exactly. But you also want it to be like a connection point. So I'm so excited for you. That's like such a cool problem to have. You know what I mean?
Right? Like, yeah, that's a good problem to have. We don't mind that.
Oh, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Well, as we're wrapping up, any final thoughts you want to share?
Just that the ebook of Hope, Love, and Lack Thereof is available for pre-order on Amazon. And y'all stay tuned if you want to subscribe to my newsletter at reeselandrypoetry.com. You'll get exclusive updates there.
Definitely. And your Instagram is also great. That is where I initially found you. And I already pre-ordered my book. I'm so excited.
Thank you
So
so
like
much.
thrilled. It's gonna be amazing.
I appreciate that.
Of course. No, I'm so happy. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode, Hope, Community, and the Healing Power of Poetry, with our special guest, Reese Landry. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your beautiful words.
Thank you
Um,
again for having me.
of course. And thank you all so much for watching Musings and Modalities with me, your pragmatic shaman bestie. Tune in the second and fourth Thursdays of each month at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern for more fabulous episodes. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Musings and Modalities with me, Tristen, your pragmatic shaman bestie. For more powerful healing tools, join me every second and fourth Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. I cover a variety of topics to meet you wherever you are at on your spiritual journey. Learn techniques to work with pendulums, past life healing, astrology, and more. Please share the show and subscribe for more guidance from your pragmatic